Guys, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. I hope that if you guys are tuning in, make sure that you guys like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Today I have a special guest that is going to talk a little bit about how new AI technologies are impacting businesses. I don't think that I have to say much. I'd like for her to introduce herself. So, Haley, how are you?
I'm well. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thank you. So tell me a little bit of what your business does.
Sure. So I own and operate Haley Wilson Communications. It does a couple different things. I do traditional communications, social media, branding, corporate, anything like that, the kind of maybe the not so fun, sexy stuff. Mm-hmm. And then I also have Impact, and that's AIMPACT.
Okay.
And Impact is all about creating a community for AI education and adoption. This is not about rah-rah cheerleading AI to the detriment of the members. This is about looking at it soberly, rationally, and saying, okay, here are some of the risks, here are some of the benefits, here's how to move forward. So I work with companies and individuals, different teams, can even be parents and schools to kids on how to navigate this new technology. It's scary for everyone, so it's good to have a fairy godmother. That's what I call myself, the fairy godmother of AI. So it's a very emotional thing, helping people kind of wrap their brain around what is AI, how do I use it safely and effectively.
So which one do you put more energy to, the communications part or the AI?
It depends on the month, and it depends on the clients who come my way.
Okay.
Last year was almost entirely devoted to Impact. We had a huge virtual event, which almost every continent, except for obviously Antarctica, we had representation. We had more than 80 speakers. Actually, I spoke, I think it's 70 speakers who came, and about 200 people who actually came for like 3 days of education online. What is this AI thing? How do I use it? And what should I know about my data, and how do I secure it? What do I tell my kids about it? Mm-hmm. And so it's really, really focused on that. We created a lot of the structure around Impact. For example, we have a twice monthly Avengers Roundtable thought leadership discussion group where we come together and we say, well, here are all the headlines. This is a new technology that came out. What do you guys think about it? What do you think is going to happen? And then we also created the Great Debate. And I say we, even though I have one person company, but I cannot do what I do alone. I have a very, very supportive network of entrepreneurs and professionals, developers, neuroscientists, investors who are all in trying to understand this AI stuff and do it responsibly. We don't really want the repeat of the last 20 years with social media, right? Here was this crazy technology that was unleashed on humanity, and I don't think anyone would claim that was a tremendous success for us human-wise.
Yeah.
So what can we do?
And whenever you make these events, what is the demographic that attends? Is it older people or is it younger people? Because if we talk about the impact that it's going to make in the future, if only older people are talking about it, then how are younger people ever going to be involved?
It's a big concern. So I would say we make a lot of efforts to attract some of the younger perspectives. It's very challenging.
Why do you think that is?
I have a couple theories. I will say, to answer your question, most of the clients and the folks I work with who reach out to me are have an appetite for AI, do tend to be my age, late 30s, all the way into baby boomers. Mm-hmm. I mean, I have to be honest, the boomers have really embraced this technology. I mean, a little walleye, I'm not sure about that, but they've learned. I have so many boomers who come to me and say, and I say that affectionately, by the way, my parents are boomers, I love them, who say, I didn't really pay attention to the writing on the wall, and I was totally lost when all this new technology with social media and all this stuff came, and I am not going to be left in the dark again. I'm going to get a hold of this I'm not going to go through that again. So it's really kind of cool. Now, to answer your question about why the younger folks are just not adopting AI as much as you think about, there's a couple different, I've thought about this a lot. And my theory, principally, is that I think this younger generation believes a lot what they're being told in school. And I don't mean that like in a really bad way, but I think that a lot of teachers, professors, academics, who tend to be the type of folks who are not necessarily the most technology forward individuals, maybe not the most excited to adopt technology, they're seeing it from their perspective. This is going to be a nightmare for cheating. We're going to have kids plagiarize. And so the kids are getting a lot of messaging about how negative and detrimental and disruptive AI is being to the curriculum, to school, to the world. And so when I talk to young kids about this, their thing is, we don't want it. I don't want it. I don't need it. I don't want to figure that out. I'm a youth director at my church, and so I'm always trying to blend the AI stuff with my kids, and they're just like, meh. The thing that they got most excited about was Suno AI, and Suno AI is essentially you put in a prompt, and it spits out a really good song. Like wow, that's almost something I could listen to. And they were so blown away by that. So for me, it's like trying to find positive experiences. I'm not trying to get on a soapbox and tell people how to think and feel about AI. I want, as a communicator, not a marketer, as a communicator, I just want people to understand this. And the best disinfectant I've ever known is sunlight. Get it out in the open. Let's talk about it. What's the thing that worries you? So I think that the younger kids these days are hearing so much negative stuff in the media, in the classroom, at the university, and then they're not being taught how to use the technology, and so they're not really seeing the benefits of it. So I think there's a lot of that, and I'm hopeful that once the students and young people actually have a chance to get their hands on it and learn how to use it safely, they'll come around. Because at the end of the day, AI is a tool. It's a value neutral tool, meaning it's not good and it's not bad. You can do something really incredible and proofread, your 50-page manuscript that would take you 3 hours. Instead, you could take that 3 hours that you would have spent on that, and you get to go play with your nephew. That's a good thing. That is a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or you can do bad. You could be a student, and you could plagiarize, and you could use ChatGPT to write your essay.
Well, I think that's what most teachers and even students tend to think about, that only. Like, I can make my life easier in this way. Like, let's take the example of school. Isn't it easy to do that? Doesn't it become we're always, as humans, we're always going to try to take the easy way out, right?
Absolutely.
All the time. So aren't there going to be more plagiarized papers?
100%. Absolutely. But let me ask you this question, and this is, if no one gets anything out of this podcast, I hope this conversation is the one that they really listen to, because what's going on in the schools right now is medieval. Who is cheated when a student cheats? Who's cheated?
Well, I mean, if you ask me, I'm cheating myself out of learning. But
you
I don't
cheat
think
yourself.
Okay.
And that's the attitude that we really need to approach it. And really, this is part of a bigger issue of how we view education. When a student goes to college, if they're cheating, why? Why would you do that? It's like lying to your doctor. Like, you're there for yourself, to educate yourself. If you are going to cheat yourself out of the experience of learning, then really at the end of the day, the only one that's cheated is you. And yeah, you could make the argument, but well, they're going to get the degree and they're going to get the credit for the education and they're going to go to get a job, and then that employer is going to be expecting them to know that information. No. It's what you learn in college, which you should learn in a good liberal arts education, is how to be a good person, how to be a good worker, how to be a good learner.
How to be a good learner is a good point, but I think that's technologies in itself make it really easy on us and not tough enough for us to learn.
Well, but then there you go. Even in the way that you say that, gives this strange autonomy sentience to the technology. It's a tool.
Yeah.
It's us.
It's us, yeah.
And then let me put it in this, because this is something I feel very strongly about, clearly.
Okay.
Let me put it in this way. Which one do you think is more morally damaging, morally wrong? The student who gets away with plagiarizing or copying something on ChatGPT and cheating, or the teacher that falsely accuses a perfectly good, honest student of cheating? Which is worse?
I would say the student.
Which one? The student
that cheats himself out.
Okay, well, let's play this out. The student cheats himself. He doesn't learn anything in that.
Because I don't think the teacher really is at fault there, because again, like, everything's happening so fast that she just doesn't know how to distinguish it, unless you really give her a paper to say, like, okay, this is the way you do it and this is the way it's not supposed to be done. You can't really convict the teacher.
But the teacher's convicting the student on less information. You're giving the teacher more credit than the teacher's giving the student. I would argue, and this is a totally opinion. There's not a right or wrong answer. I'm just trying to have like this conversation with you.
Absolutely.
This thought process or experiment. The kid knows he cheated himself. The teacher who comes out and accuses an honest teacher or an honest student of cheating cheats the student, because that student did do the essay. That student did put the work in. And then on top of that, not only did they do the work, you refuse to give them the credit for that, but you're besmirching them. You're accusing them. You are saying that they're in the wrong. Now, I want to be clear. I have utmost compassion for teachers and professors right now trying to navigate this craziness. Mm-hmm. And if you're a teacher, you're a principal or a professor, and you're like, I don't know what to do with this AI stuff, call me. I have methods in place that will help you navigate this stuff. But listen when I say this. There is not a single software or tool or platform that will be able to 100% without error tell you whether or not a student used AI. There is not a tool out there. They will market it out. People will spend lots of money. And unfortunately, a lot of professors and teachers are using this technology. They're getting false positives, and they're accusing these perfectly good, honest students. And you're starting them off. And if I was that student, I would say, well, I'm going to cheat then. Because if you're going to accuse me of it, then I might as well do it. So for me, in my opinion, it's a bigger evil because this is a communal problem. This is now one person doing harm to another person. Where in this case, where it's the student cheating, he's harming himself. No one else is harmed. I mean, that could be argued, but directly harmed.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's kind of the frame that I'm trying to get out there, because I think it's very tempting to get really obsessed about, oh, the student is cheating. Students have been cheating since there was school. AI does make it easier. But I think the students and the teachers that will succeed following this crazy change with AI are the ones that are able to say, okay, your world as a student and my world as a teacher has changed. We just need to, let's go ahead and rip that Band-Aid off and accept that. That's the reality. What can I do as a teacher to help you understand what this technology is, because it's not going anywhere? And asking your students to just never use it is like going back into the early 2000s and saying to your middle schoolers, never mind, they don't need to worry about computers. I mean, it's here, it's not going anywhere. So I don't want to handicap these youngsters. I don't want them to be able to learn it.
So what are the common misconceptions whenever someone comes to you in regards to AI?
I think there are two main misconceptions. I think one is that it can't do anything. Like, AI is like, they'll go and they'll experiment with ChatGPT, and they may not have prompted it in the most effective way, and so the stuff they get is junk, right? Okay. So they look at it and like, well, I don't really see the value of AI because this is junk. Well, it can be junk, but it's garbage in, garbage out, boo boo. Let me show you how to put it in the right way. That's one. And the second misconception is that it can do everything. So it's like different sides of the spectrum, right? There's people who are like, I don't believe AI at all. It's useless. And then there's people who are like, this is amazing. I'm going to write a book. And I am guilty. I fall in that camp quite a bit. And that's why I rely a lot on my network. Noah is one of my favorite people, and he runs AI Genius Consulting. And he is always telling me, he's like, okay, well, I think what you're wanting AI to do is not possible yet. Because I'll be like, hey, Noah, can I create an interactive chart of all of the numbers from the stock market in the last 30 years and have people be able to interact or, show when there was new money created and when there, just like this idea that I had for one of my clients. And we went back and forth. He's like, yeah, AI's not there yet. So there is a lot of this kind of having to check your expectations and set them in the right way, right?
Yeah. And whenever that happens, then how do you break it down for the people that come to you? Like, let's say I want to learn about AI, how it will be beneficial to me. Do you also explain the things that can be of detriment?
Yes. Yeah. Always. I think that you have to be transparent. Like I said, I'm not out here to gild any lilies. There are legitimate concerns around AI, and so for me, so much of this AI work is emotional. It's almost like therapy. And
emotional for you or for the person?
For them. I mean, for me, because I'm connecting with them, but for my clients and for people who come to me, they usually are on one side or the other, or they have so much anxiety about it. Like, is this going to really replace, is this how I have to work? And trying to figure out where their place is within the new AI world. I mean, if you're a graphic designer and you look at the Canva plugin for ChatGPT, you're going to think, well, yeah, that's not ready to replace me now, but this is the worst this technology is ever going to be. What does my job prospects look like in 5 years when people can put a prompt in and they get extremely good professional?
Okay, and that's a perfect example then. So what would you tell them not to worry?
No, I never say not to worry. No, I never say not to worry, because you know what? The minute that I swear God loves making a liar out of you. The minute you say, oh, you don't need to worry about that, that's the one thing that comes and nips you in the butt. But no, what I do is it's kind of having a real candid conversation and say, and this is my perspective, right? There's 3 sides to every story, his side, her side of the truth, right? But for me, I think that this is a really cool, exciting thing as a graphic designer. If you can wrap your brain around it and say, well, wait a minute. I have 15 years of expertise. I know what good looks like. So whereas someone else using AI for a graphic design, they don't have the experience. They don't know what good looks like. They don't know where the eye goes. There is so much money and thought and research that goes into where does your eye go the minute it goes onto a website? Where does your eye look at when it looks at a graphic design? And these people, my clients, know this stuff.
Okay.
The AI doesn't know that. So for me, I'm like, well, here's your option. You can learn this technology and see how you can get it to work for you, increase your output.
But to that point that you're trying to make, is the AI not capable of learning that really fast in, like, let's say 1 sentence? Hey, or let me load 10, 15 pages of this research that was done based on what we look at whenever we pop up a website. Mm-hmm. Isn't that a good point to make, though.
Oh, it is.
With the 15 years of experience of a graphic designer, because I mean, again, it's my opinion again, right?
Oh, no,
but
it's right though.
But
You're right.
we've taken all of the internet's history and put it into ChatGPT. So that in itself, it's beating our 15 years of experience in whatever, right?
Yeah, but you think about it. Sometimes you can have too much information. So part of it is that the human can separate the wheat from the chaff in ways that AI can't. Now, eventually it will be able to do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But who's going to be prompting? It's not, the AI can create something, but you have to have the confidence of like the thing that you get after it. You have to be able to physically look at it and say that was good or bad. And maybe it'll get to the point where you can just trust the AI. But I think that as long as we have designers and artists and experts, they're going to be able to say things in a style, in a way that is self-aware, in a way that AI isn't there yet.
Self-aware
Of like, I know this is good. I know this is bad. I know what I'm trying to say. I know, AI isn't self-aware. It's just spitting out a bunch of information to you. It doesn't know it's good. It doesn't know if it's bad. It's not prideful. It's not excited about it's not passionate about what it's creating. Whereas a graphic designer can meet with you and say, oh, I got this sense from you, from your spirit, and put that kind of human spirit into it. So, I mean, I still believe in humans over AI. I do on a lot of things. But I actually think the graphic designers who learn how to use this technology help train the technology, let it be an extension of themselves, increase your output, increase your ability to spend more time with your family and less time in your business while still making the same or more. That's like, to me, the biggest benefit to AI right now is the time gain it gives you. And that's the question that companies, businesses, and individuals are going to have to ask themselves when they get AI and they start using it and they get all this time back in their day.
Well, I don't think we really have time to explain. Well, we don't really have a lot of time, though, because it's already happening in real time. Our small business owners not competing against big AI companies already?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. But I mean, I guess I'm saying, like, even taking the AI stuff out of it in terms of AI development, if you are, like, for me, a communications person, I don't use AI in a lot of my comm stuff because I have to be respectful to my clients. But say it gets to a point where my clients are comfortable with that and I'm able to I have 50% more time. Do I want to use that time to go find more clients and more work and put more money in my pocket? Or do I want to have more Haley, have more time with my family, write more, my stuff, create more? That's like this big decision that AI is giving everyone. With all of these output gains, what do you want to do with that? Do you want to just make more money? So I think that's kind of an interesting question I'm seeing my clients kind of come. I was like, man, this has saved me a lot of time. And some of my clients go in and find more work. Other clients say, I'm good. I'm just going to keep my pace the way it is. So it's kind of interesting.
Okay, so the consequences of using AI is different for everyone in different businesses.
Well, I guess what I'm just saying is that it's up to you to decide what you want to do with the time that you get back from AI. So it's kind of an interesting question that I'm also seeing larger companies like, okay, well, we can replace all of these humans and get a lot more time and productivity back in our business. So you're seeing it's a choice. You're having to choose what your ultimate goal is. So it's interesting to see in the realest way I've seen in the last 20 years that people actually having to be confronted with this question: what do I really want more of? Do I want more quality life or do I want more money?
Using AI, does it not take away from using or having to stress our own mind, though? Isn't that kind of what we need to energize the human spirit, because if we tend to use AI a lot, like a lot of people already redact their emails through AI. It's not even them speaking.
Oh yeah, it's hilarious. The good old meme of one person's AI talking to another person's AI. You know, we're not really having. Absolutely, you will see that. You're already seeing that. And I mean, I would argue. See, AI's been around a long time. Like spell check, right?
Yeah.
Are you confident with your spelling?
No, not really.
I'm gonna tell you.
Grammarly, I don't know.
Words are my bread and butter. And if someone made me do a spelling bee, I don't think I would get past the second or third round. Why is that? Because of spell check. I don't have to learn how to spell anything. My AI will fix it. So yes, you're right. It can make you lazy. And that's where, that's why the people I work with, it's not just a tool, it's like a way of life, it's a lifestyle. Like, what are your, I would never let AI, unless there was a very specific reason for it, let them totally write an article for me. But you can do that. That's a choice, and people are doing that. And the result of that is that the quality you're putting out is not good. People can't connect with your your content. They're not commenting. They're not coming back. What's the point of doing it then? If it's not going to be good, why do it?
It's a little weird how at first social media was really good at connecting us, or that was the goal of what it was supposed to be, and now it's been kind of a detriment to the people that overuse it. And now even AI is supposed to bring us all together even more, I guess, as an addition to social media, but it's never gonna be able to connect us in the way that we want, because isn't AI trying to simulate human interactions?
You know, it's really interesting you bringing this up, because this is one of the things that we talk a lot about in the Avengers Roundtables. We actually did a great debate on will AI solve or make the loneliness epidemic worse, right? Because there's a lot of lonely people out here, and you could get them in AI. In fact, during COVID in New York, they did like an experiment with 200 senior citizens who were in lockdown. They couldn't go anywhere. Remember, COVID was particularly egregious for them because they're a very, very sensitive population.
Yeah.
And they did an experiment with AIs. Gave 200 senior citizen AIs for about a year, and then checked in on them, and they found different kind of mixed results. Some of them, it really did help. It really helped having a human-like. If you ever seen, I don't know if you've seen the movie Castaway. I know you're not a big movie buff, but you know Tom Hanks with Wilson with the volleyball. It's in our nature to humanize something, to put as a word. I can't pronounce it. Anthropomorphize, I think is the right word. I don't know.
That's a new word. Okay.
Right? To anthropomorphize. We do it with animals. We do it with things. Right? We do it with our cars. You name your car. There's a lot of people name it. I mean, I know I've dated guys who like go out with like diapers and like rub down their car because they love their car. So, oh, it's my sweet car. Okay, all right. So,
but what is that? Is that a feeling of like us building love for that item or humanizing them?
I think it's just our nature. We are social creatures, and we feel comfort in connection. Yeah, you have your odd loner who can go out and live alone, but for the reality is that human beings, our evolution has made us social creatures. You would never find an ant living alone on its own. We're the same. So I think it's deeply hardwired in us to seek connection in the things that we find. With AI, in fact, this week, there was a new product. It's actually called Friend. I think it's www.friend.com. And I think actually they raised $1.8 million, and they spent like at least $1 million on the domain alone. But it's an AI device that you wear around your neck. It kind of looks like you know what senior citizens wear them, like if they fall.
Yeah,
it looks like that.
The button.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the selling point of it, and it's for $100. It's available for pre-order now.
Pretty convenient.
Is to have a friend. It's literally you buy yourself a friend, and it will interact. It will see I'll send you the trailer, and you can include it. But you'll see in the trailer there's a girl eating, and the thing says, "That looks delicious." And I just kind of have to ask. I have to ask, like, do we want that? Do I really want a little thing around my neck looking at what I'm eating and say, that looks delicious? Like, that's like a stage 5 creeper. So there is this, like, creepiness side to AI, for sure. But there's, people are buying that. People are buying a lot of these, like, Pendant, which is another AI device. And it's designed to kind of fix loneliness. But there's a lot of ethical things with that. I'll give you an interesting example. Lena Trivedi, she's actually the lady who wrote all the poems in the Thai Beanie Baby cards. Yeah, she's a really amazing lady. She did one of the great debates with us. She did the loneliness epidemic great debate in AI.
She led it, or
she did it. She was one of the people.
She was for, or
she was against. So her company is Joy.ai, and it is all around AI helping people make connections. That's her. She researches. She has a great partner that they do a lot of stuff on that, and a lot of studying around how can we make this AI stuff be a positive impact on our personal connections. That's what she does. So when I approached her about doing the great debate and saying I need a devil's advocate, someone who's going to be like, oh no, this AI stuff is going to like be terrible. She was very resistant because she's like, well, I am pro AI. My company is pro AI, and I'm afraid of coming out here and being too negative. And so I understand, no worries. Lena calls me later that night and she says, I'm going to do it. And I said, really? What changed your mind? And she said, well, I came home and I was talking to my daughter. She's a teenager, 14 years old. And we were talking about my day, and I told her about the great debate. And that got us talking about AI. Well, I just found out my 14-year-old daughter has 14 AI boyfriends, one for each year, I guess. And it blew her mind that her daughter had an app, and she had not one, not two, but 14 different AI boyfriends.
Okay, this is all new to me. I feel like I'm so lost, really.
That's right.
That's crazy.
And I was like, well, why 14? And she's like, I asked that question too. So the developers of this technology have faced a lot of criticism that they're creating monsters in people. If you
people.
create the users.
Okay.
What kind of behavior are you creating in a user? If the user is allowed to abuse and mistreat and be just generally nasty to the AI, is that not reinforcing behavior and neural pathways so that they're going to take that same kind of energy and that same behavior, and they've not been punished by the AI like a normal person would punish you and say, you're not going to talk to me that way. So they go out into the world having warped expectations of human connections. So they've had a lot of this criticism. So
parenting is going to become way harder.
Gosh. So as a response to that, these AI developers have put in certain triggers that if you are abusing the AI or you're saying, it can just ghost you. It can say, no, I'm not going to talk to you anymore. You're done. I'm done. I'm not. They could break up with you, essentially. The AI boyfriend could break up with you.
Okay.
So what happened was that Lena's daughter essentially had burned through 13 different AI apps, just testing it out to see what she could get away with and kind of abusing the AI. I'm not trying to make it sound like Lena's daughter is like, she's really lovely. In fact, she came several times to some of our roundtable discussions, and she's a very smart, switched on young lady.
But I think as a kid, you're discovering the world, so therefore so you know who to push. Obviously, you're not if you're not gonna push a real person like that, but in close quarters, you can push a robot like that and to see what the limitations are. So I think that you can't condemn a kid just because they're
No,
kids. It's like they're curious. They want to
I would
find.
have done the same. I probably would have gone through 20 by the time I was her age.
They want to find out what they're capable of.
Well, I think for Lena was a real, and for me too, when she told me the story, I had to pick my jaw up off the floor.
So she wanted to talk about it because she saw what?
I don't want to put words in Lena's mouth, but what I understood that her change in decision was because, you know what, there are some legitimate concerns about this, and as a true advocate for this technology, I would be doing a disservice to my company, to my mission, to the people I support by pretending to only talk about the good stuff. No, we're also going to talk about the elephant in the room, and we're going to figure this out together. Because it's not going to help anyone in the long run if we pretend that AI is all good and safe and that there aren't these unintended consequences. And these are what we can see. I mean, there's so much to this AI stuff. I mean, think about, this is maybe a poor metaphor, but when Henry Ford created the car, do you think he could have ever imagined the fuzzy thing around the steering wheel or the dice in the mirror or the vanity plates? Like all of these cottage industries and unintended consequences and things that have resulted out of just his one idea. No. You never do that, because that's the beauty of being human, is you just like build and build and build and build and build. And so I wonder what is going to be AI's fuzzy dice. You know, what's gonna be the AI's vanity plate, the new idea, the new unintended consequence.
Well, it becomes scary because if you're gonna feed this machine and this machine at some point or somehow gains its own awareness, I think that's what people are worried about.
You're talking about artificial generalized intelligence, AGI, and depending on who you talk and how much they want you to invest in them, it could be anywhere from it's coming next week to it's not coming in 30 years. So it is a pretty significant step from artificial intelligence to generalized artificial intelligence. And that's where, when I was talking about the self-awareness piece, that's when it knows what good is. That's when it knows what bad is.
And what came out of the loneliness talk or debate?
So our debates, we do declare a winner, but they're usually, it's more theatrical. The point of the great debates are really to just bring up the conversation. And one, let's talk about this stuff in ways that you guys probably haven't been thinking about it. Let's have some audience participation and give you an opportunity to speak, because letting people vent their concerns is a really great way to kind of take the temperature down on this whole discussion, right? And in terms of what else we got out of it, I mean, it's just, I get a lot of people saying they want to do more great debates. I mean, I hope I don't ever come across as like having the answer to all of this. I'm not a prophet. Like, I can't see the future. I don't know what's going to happen. I just see some things that make me think there's going to be, this is what's going to happen, this is what's going to happen. And I can help people be resilient emotionally and within their business as much as possible to be able to handle all of this huge wave of transformation. The main message is not so much about trying to tell people how to feel about AI, but more about like, hey, boo, it's here. It's not going anywhere, and sticking your head in the sand is not the right answer. It's just not.
So it's more about education than anything.
That's it. It's education. Again, the best disinfectant I know is sunlight. Let's shine a light on it. And there are really wonderful things that are coming out of AI. We have people who are able to speak again. We have people who are able to walk again. You know, I don't know if you paid much attention to Neuralink. There's a really great video about it. Literally has given speech and mobility to a quadriplegic.
I did see that. He was able to. I think their whole point is to basically hardwire that Neuralink to learn your brain, everything that all your biology, and being able to adapt it back to a computer.
It's just to enable them. And there's some other things with Neuralink that are a little bit scary. One of my Avengers in our roundtable got to go for like a 6-hour tour. And he signed an NDA, so he couldn't share much with us. But he shared with us that in one of the rooms he went into, there were 2 chimpanzees with Neuralinks in, playing video games, playing Call of Duty or whatever it was, like human kids, like very competently. And the Neuralink was enabling them to do that. Now, he couldn't tell us, or we couldn't really ask what's the point of that, like what's the goal of that type of research. But you have to ask yourself, that's kind of crazy, that's kind of scary. What if you're able to go into the mind and do these things? What information are you able to access? What information are you able to put in? Right?
Well, the thing is that I'm like, what is their goal? Because at the end of the day, if they are collecting, I mean, yeah, I know it is money. It is money driven. But if they're able to learn how we react cognitively to a lot of things, because I mean, a video game might seem easy, but there's a million things going on in our brain at the same time. They're trying to learn that. What are they going to adapt it to? Are they going to make robots out of it?
I don't have a crystal ball, as much as I call myself a fairy godmother and all of that. I don't know what they're going to do with it, but we have a good idea of what some organizations and some thinkers are imagining this technology to do. I don't think so much that they're going to try to make robots out of you. I think that they're going to, they want to have more information on you. Imagine the data that they get if they use bio. Parts of China actually have bioscans that you come up to you go into a train station and you just hover your fingerprints over the thing and it opens up and lets you in. That's your ticket. Your money and your ticket and all of that is tied to your bioprints, whatever that is. Retina, fingerprint, a device. That's scary to me.
I know Amazon has some of their stores where you could just pick out items and they just do the eye scan and then they charge.
I've done that. That's kind of interesting.
You've done that?
Yeah, I did it in San Francisco.
But I think that even that is so invasive because cash you could control. I mean, I don't want to raise any red flags over here, but cash you can control. But I think that the idea of Apple Pay, all these electronic forms of payment, I even think it's very detrimental to a society.
I agree.
Because then who has the control? You no longer...
Blurring the line. Information is power, right? So if someone knows something about you, that's a little bit of a power. You think about the latest thing, and I'm not going to get into politics here, but the IRS, I think it's specific here in North Carolina, it may not be, can now look into your bank account.
Really?
So if you're a small business and they want to nosy around to see if there's something that maybe you shouldn't have been doing tax-wise, they can now go into your bank account and look at that. They have access to that. I can't imagine that being okay even 20 years ago. But because we get so accustomed to sharing our data, it's really just like, okay, yeah, that's just another window open into what you see what I'm doing, whatever. I already have 50 windows open. What's another window? I think that's where people get with it. But there's a complacency that sets in. And what I find really fascinating about humans is that over the last 20 years, our trust in big tech has gone this way, simultaneously while our reliance on it has gone up. Why do we continue to rely on it even more so when we're not trusting it? I can't explain that. I'm the same. I don't love the fact that Alexa sits and listens to stuff. I don't love the fact that I could be talking to have a conversation in Alexa, and then the next thing I know, I'm scrolling and I get an ad for that thing I was talking about in my conversation. That's creepy, creepy, creepy. I don't love it. But do you see me pulling Alexa out of my room? No.
But how do you counteract that? How do you stop? How do you rewire people to be less compliant? Because
I don't know.
I think we are complacent because life does become easier. I mean, I don't know what I agreed to whenever I got the new iOS thing, but
Yeah.
I just did just because.
You ever read the license agreement or whatever it is? Terms of use.
1, 2, 3 seconds and it's gone. So is there a way to counteract that? And I think that's when it starts becoming a problem, because right now it's small, but the magnitude of the problem is only going to keep on growing. And so therefore, is there something that we can do today to stop it?
I think so. I think, being very protective of your own data. I remember 20 years ago looking at my friend Susan. She's very about certain things. I love you, Susan. I hope you didn't get offended by that. And I remember kind of thinking, well, that's a little strange. She told me that when she went to doctor's offices, she only filled out the parts of the forms that were actually she felt was relevant. She's like, I don't think that they need to know all that information.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember thinking, well, that's like your doctor. But that was 20 years ago. That was before you had this huge monopolization of our health. Now you have like Atria and you have Novant, and they're corporations, right?
Yeah, it's
so
not.
It's not so much your little doctor wanting to know your information.
Yeah.
It's like the whole megalomania thing, and that's where it starts to become a little problematic, because we know that companies are not often very responsible with our data. I mean, look at what happened with Meta, right? And I'm not saying anything. I mean, there's HIPAA, there's things around health documentation, but I think I actually applaud her in having that questioning attitude around, why do you want this information? Why do you need this?
Okay.
Right? Having that questioning attitude and knowing that you own your data. It's yours. So no one really, other than maybe the police, in certain extreme cases, is really entitled. The bank maybe is really entitled. OpenAI is not entitled to your data. It's not. Midjourney, no. And that's why a lot of people are going and suing these companies, because they're saying, well, I didn't say it was okay for you to train your AI on my data, right? And that's a whole other debate in itself. So I think having a questioning attitude and being very thoughtful and mindful about where you're putting your information, and actually for some of those terms of use, if it's a really big deal, if it's like something that's going to have a lot, like you're about to give a lot of your information away to it, then it is smart to take that license agreement and pop it into ChatGPT and say, summarize. Is there anything in here I should be concerned about?
Oh, that's a good way. Okay.
I mean, to be real, it's not pragmatic to do for every single time you see one of those pop up, but for certain things, like if I'm a new, like Stripe, if Stripe is asking me as like a payment processing thing that's gonna touch my business a lot, I'm going to review that, because I see a lot of criticism about Stripe and say, oh, you should have read the agreement. So being able to go through and like, oh yeah, well, that makes me uncomfortable. Maybe I don't want to use Stripe. Maybe I want to use another type of company that doesn't have that type of.
But what things would Stripe have that wouldn't?
I'll give you an example. Something that I found in Stripe, and I'm not a huge fan. I'm not a fan of Stripe at all, because they have a lot of challenges, like just I think ethical challenges. But one of them in their agreement is that they can, any money that they have withholding. So say your customer reports a charge. They didn't recognize the Stripe charge come through, and they said, oh, that's a fraudulent charge. And you go back and you're like, oh, darn, I didn't know that was you, Haley. If they say that happens, and then you say, oh, well, no problem, I'll go to Stripe and I'll say, well, they didn't mean it. Well, Stripe will say, well, you're never going to get a person on the phone in the first place. But they could say, well, we're going to hold on and investigate. And it could be up to 80, 90 days. So they have your money for something your client, you performed your service for the client, and the client has paid the money, but you don't have it, right? Whatever that is, that money, they reserve the right, this is in the user agreement, that they can invest that money while they're holding it.
Just like a bank.
So let me tell you where that gets problematic. They have zero, and in fact, it's against their self-interest to resolve that in a quickly and timely manner. For me as an entrepreneur, when that is, I'm in a small business, so a payment, it could be, especially early on, can mean, whether I'm able to meet my financial obligation or not. But they're not concerned about that. So and then on top of that, you can't get on the phone with them. So that's why I say they're legally in their right to do that. And I actually think the practice of holding on to money because it might be a fraudulent charge or whatever is a good one, and it has a really decent reason for existing. But then you add in this complicated layer of, well, wait a minute, now you're using this like really stressful moment in my business to make money and profit off of my thing. Because if you weren't holding that money, you wouldn't have been able to go and take it and invest in it. See what I'm saying?
Yeah.
See how that's not right?
Yeah.
So that's an example of something that I found through doing that process.
Just by you bringing up that story of a friend about her questioning things, I think even the big tech was aware that they were gonna advertise social media more for people that wouldn't question why they do things, because a lot of the things that are broadcasted through social media, it's pictures, how people are living a good life, whatever, blah blah blah. I tend not to feed into it too much, just because it could be so entertaining, and I'm there for a prolonged period of times, and it just I get all that propaganda, so I get influenced. So I just try not to feed off of it too much. But I can see, just while you talk about it, is that kids, teenagers, or even young adults are very vulnerable because they never question why they posted their pictures, why they put on the captions, why they share things at all. Which social media was supposed to be a good thing at first, but they now are advertising all of their data for free. And I'm like, okay, well, kids are the most vulnerable right now. Like they don't know why they're doing it. They're not going to question anything. So I think that's why I'm glad that you're doing this, because it brings some type of awareness to adults, and so hopefully younger adults start picking up on it, on questioning, why do we scroll through social media endlessly?
I'll tell you why.
Why?
Well, they actually did a brain study on this. And they took a brain scan of someone who just smoked a cigarette, a smoker who smoked a cigarette, and then they took a brain scan of someone who was scrolling. And the same parts of the brain lit up. It is an addiction. What happens when we're scrolling and we see things we like or we get a like, there is a hit of dopamine. And that's a pleasure. It sends a little pleasure to your brain. And so that's why when you get the death scroll, you're like, why am I still doing this? It's like 2:00 at night. It's because your brain is like, I want more of that dopamine. And unfortunately, the more you hit it, the less you get, and the more you feel like you want it. And so it is an addiction. So to your point, that's in a fully developed brain. And the human brain, I hate to tell you kids, I know you don't like to hear it, but the human brain does not fully develop until the age of 26. So I worry about the neurological, physiological changes that we're wreaking on these kids using technology that is new to humanity. I mean, it's only been in our existence for 20 years.
Your parents don't even know how to use it, yeah.
Yeah. Well, my mother just found X, which she still calls Twitter, and all I ever get anymore are like horse videos and cat videos. It's like she's discovered the internet for the first time. It's hilarious. But I see it.
It's always funny whenever the older generation finds social media, because they barely know how to type in something in a map. And I'm always baffled, because I'm like, okay, you don't know how to do that?
It's pretty wild. And I work with some of the seniors at my church, and that's a whole other thing. It's like we've left behind a whole population in our society of people who are not tech savvy.
Yes.
I have a really good friend. She just lost her husband in 45 years. She's 77. She hasn't worked since 1989. It was a sudden thing that her husband died. And yeah, you can criticize and be a Job's counselor all day long and say, well, you should have been getting up on the technology. You should have been learning that. But it doesn't matter. Shoulda, woulda, coulda. She's here, 77, grieved, and she doesn't know how to look up her bank account.
Yeah,
right?
and it kind of frustrates me when, like, just that perfect example. An older person walks into a bank and she requests to see someone, and then they tell her, oh, well, now we only make online appointments, go to your bank. Well, she's like, well, I can't do that. I don't know how to do that. Well, I mean, I don't know. That's the only way we do it. How do you, like, it frustrates me because that person could just write you down on a sheet and do it manually, but just because you're impatient and you don't want to waste your time on that, you're not gonna do it.
It drives me crazy. I wish sometimes we could just go back to cash, like just the ease of that, because I feel like I would spend less. I would. I was like, oh, I want to hold on to that.
Yeah.
And, and I just feel doing banking as a small business is actually very challenging. Getting money in and out of the bank is always very challenging. For whatever reason. I mean, like moving money around. And a lot of that, I'm like, why is this so hard? And a lot of finance just feels like it's almost designed to be deliberately difficult. And I don't think that's necessarily the case. But our society is like, 200 plus years now, and all societies kind of get to a maturity level where you have so much bloat and so much bureaucracy. And I kind of think that's where we are. I mean, I think about getting a Facebook when I was in college. I was like one of the first kids on Facebook. I remember it.
Uh-huh.
And how easy that was. It was like literally your name, your email, and your photo. I think that was it.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe one other thing, your school.
Yeah.
And that was it. You're on. You're ready to go. Let's go. Nowadays, you go on to Facebook just to update anything about your profile or to change a security setting, and you look at all of I'm a tech savvy person, and even I struggle with it. It feels bureaucratic. I feel like I'm in the DMV. And big tech is taking on this very bureaucratic feeling, and you're seeing it in the size of the companies. Right?
Yes.
They're so big. So I do think they're getting to that point where they're trying to make the argument they're too big to fail, just like the banks. So we are already in a corporatocracy, right, where corporations have so much influence. And I do not I'm not kind when it comes to talking about corporate America. I mean, I think it's a system designed to treat people like machines.
But why? But isn't that the whole goal of AI? Like, why are you so against corporate America?
Oh, I don't think it's the whole goal of AI. I'm not really sure if AI has a goal. It's a tool. Does that table have a goal? The reason, mainly because of my experience. I mean, I worked for 5 different companies for a span of more than 15 years, all very different, from financial services to biotech to nuclear energy, all that. And don't get me wrong, I love a lot of those people I worked with, just wonderful human beings. I'm not criticizing the human beings. I'm criticizing the system, and that it is very much, doesn't matter what industry you're in, so designed around driving revenue and money that if that's your only aim, you will not. You're not going to do things that feel good. It's not going to be for the ultimate good of mankind if it's about putting money in your pocket. I'll give you an example. I will give you an example of a company I didn't work for. And this is true. You can look this up. Pepsi, this was maybe 10, 15 years ago. They went and sent researchers to some of the poorest nations, some of the poorest places in Mexico and Africa, to find out what the adequate sugar ratio was for the Pepsi to get those people hooked, these people who barely afford stuff, to get them hooked on Pepsi.
So they would do like test trials on like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this?
That's right. And really directly targeting low-income people, because a lot of the higher educated people were like saying no to sugar. So Pepsi decided to pivot, and you can look at that as, well, that's a good business decision. You pivoted. You realized, you read the room and realized, well, I'm not going to go after those people. They don't want my sugar. But instead of that, I look at it like, you're going after who? Well, those people wise it up on my product is not good for you. So I'm going to go after people who don't know better, who don't have the means to know better. And then I'm going to make it even harder for them to turn my product down. That doesn't feel right to me. There's no law against it. In fact, I'm sure there's some business people that would say, well, that was a smart idea. I would do the same thing. And maybe that's the problem, that my idea of like a moral code is a little different than corporate America. But I do see this tendency of the emperor's new clothes too, within like these in boardrooms. Have you ever heard that, emperor's new clothes?
No.
It's an old story. I think it's a Hans Christian Andersen story where he decides to this emperor hires a tailor, and he says, unless this is like the most perfect thing, I'm gonna kill you. So the tailor decides to be really smart and pretends and comes out with an invisible suit and says, this is your outfit. And I've got to tell you something about it that was special, because only really smart people, only people who are like get it, can actually see it. So like if you're having a hard time seeing it, it's maybe it's because you're not one of those people, right? So what do you think the emperor did? Oh, I can see it. Oh yeah, I'm gonna put that thing on. And then goes out butt naked. And then if anyone says, the emperor is naked, y'all, oh well. That's just because you don't get it. That is the experience of corporate America, of people making a series of decisions, sharing facts, alternate facts, that are to appease and get ahead politically, at the detriment sometimes of even the person that you're lying to, even the person you're lying for. I've seen it over and over and over. It does not matter what industry. And again, I'm not saying that it's the individual people so much as it's the system and the type of personalities that it draws. This creation of a scarcity mindset. It's a zero-sum game. If you succeed, I fail. If you get something, I'm not getting something. That whole feeling. And to sum it up, I love Rumi. He's like one of my favorite poets, a Sufi poet. He said, if you worship money, you will be bought and sold your whole life. I just got really tired of being bought and sold. So I guess I'm doing a small business thing. Mm-hmm. Not nearly as lucrative, but much more fulfilling. And I don't have to pretend that there's not a butt-naked man sitting in the office with me.
But I don't think the system was ever supposed to be influenced by virtue. I think that then it would require the people in itself to instill virtue. But then you are still always, I think in societies, you're always going to have the people that feed from it and the people that feed it.
Sure.
So unless there's a cut between those, just like across all technologies, there's nothing we can do.
Yep.
It's like if we keep on accepting these policies, we keep on buying into the new technologies, we're essentially feeding what's coming to us.
We have our own part in it, right? We do have to take responsibility. I mean, I'm an adopter of this stuff as much as anyone. And, part of the system, it's a personal opinion, but I do think you can have systems themselves that are just not virtuous. I mean, this is a very controversial statement. Maybe that's good for your podcast or not, but I would not look at communism, for example, as a virtuous system. I could see it trying to be a virtuous, but the result is not. Right?
Yeah.
So there are systems and organization hierarchies that aren't going to appeal to our better natures. And I'll say this because I actually don't even think it's capitalism. I think we're like in a post-capitalism world, again, more corporatocracy, oligarchy feeling. It's like what Winston Churchill said. He said capitalism is the worst form of government except for all the other ones.
Yeah, because it's like just like democracy. It's like it's not better. It's way better than all the other ones so far.
And I don't have a better answer. That said, I don't like putting lipsticks on pigs. And to me, pretending out here that things are fine in the state of Denmark when they're really not, that is not doing anyone any favors. And it's a fine line because I don't want to come across like an old crank who's like, oh, well, she just left corporate America and she's just all bitter about it. I'm not bitter about it. I just, when if you go throughout the day and everybody you meet, they're an asshole, maybe the fourth or fifth person you meet, you have to start asking yourself, am I the asshole?
Well, I think today we always think that the person speaking or telling us the things that they experience, they haven't experienced it firsthand. They're just telling us opinions. Mm-hmm. So I think it's super important whenever you have someone that has lived through it, felt everything that corporate America does to you, and now vocalizing it because
if anything, I hope to validate what maybe one or two of your listeners are feeling and experiencing. And actually I find this a lot with corporate women, a lot of professional women I talk to. It's just they feel so burnt out by that. Mm-hmm. And glass ceilings are a real thing. And I think a lot of people felt and feel very let down by the diversity, inclusion, and DIB stuff because it had a lot of promises. And what I believed in that so much, I still do to an extent, of like representation and Women's History Month and all of that. But then I also experienced being a really shut out woman in corporate America and being called a girl by my boss and saying I have a lot to learn, young lady, at the age of 35. I experienced that kind of stuff. So, I don't know. I just I'd like to validate if someone's having that kind of experience, that I don't think this is how it has to be. I think there could be things because in the 80s, companies really did look after their employees. You had amazing benefits. You had pensions. None of this 401k crap. You had pensions, and you felt like a community. It's like that whole we're a family stuff.
When it actually was, or actually felt like it.
A lot of that, like you look at Duke Energy, which used to be Duke Power, they had the CEOs and the people that were head of those companies up until like the late 80s. They were engineers. They were people who were out in the trenches, who had earned their way up through the company ranks and rubbed shoulders with the people. So they cared about the people.
Yeah.
Then you had MBAs and business people and accountants and bean counters who were the new CEOs. And you still see that today. And
but that have never had real first-hand experience. They've never dug a hole in their life. They've never even touched a shovel. They
couldn't even explain it to you. And I'm not saying that in order to be a successful leader, you have to do all the little things that your employees do. I think that, but I think on some level, I think that's why that show, Undercover Boss.
Oh, yeah.
Went on for so long and resonated with so many people is because there's this employees feel real disconnect from the people above them. And when I worked in corporate America, I was working in internal comms in one of my roles, and the company that I'd worked for had just totally changed their health plan, meaning that some of the employees were going to be paying 2 to 3 times more a month for their health insurance. This is a big freaking deal when you have a family of 4, you have kids in college, and that extra bit of money every month is a decision between which college that kid goes to or which house I can buy, right? Real life decisions. So we hosted all hands so that she, the head of the HR, could sit and answer questions and address concerns and explain why the company made this decision. It was one of the biggest disasters in my career. Not for me personally, but just sitting and watching it. I was getting in questions because people could text them in or whatever. And at the time, my boss, who's a very lovely man, but unfortunately a little bit of a yes man, would say, no, you can't ask that question. And we're like, well, like one question was like, well, what about your health insurance? Did your health insurance get impacted? That was one of the questions that kept coming up to the head of HR. Right?
Okay.
How's this impacting you? And I said, well, and I was whispering to him, I was like, we need to ask this question. We can frame it in a more positive way, but we have to ask a question similar to this, because if we don't do it, someone in the room is going to ask it, and we don't get to decide how they frame that question.
Yeah, then opinions start being formed and a mass.
Well, what do you think happened?
I don't know.
I didn't get to ask that question. So,
Wow, okay.
Unfortunately, someone in the audience who was hot, very mad, asked
And
it.
you give them their reasons, though, because you're like, you're right to feel that way.
The person being mad. That's what the whole point of this was supposed to be. Like, guys, we know this sucks. This is the state of the economy. Health insurance has just skyrocketed. This is what we have had to make a decision. We decided to, because we didn't want to limit your health benefits, we decided to go with a more expensive option. That's talking point number one. Second talking point is we made the decision to go with this instead of laying people off. You know, there's like
I love language because it's like looking for a way to justify what you did while at the same time
or
you
explaining it, or because if you this is my thing about business in corporate America. It doesn't matter if you're corporate or small company or one person. If you did the right thing, then you can talk about it. If you feel good about your decision, such as limiting people's health care, if that is, you feel good, there was a reason you made that decision, there is no reason why you shouldn't be able to speak about it.
Okay.
Right?
Okay, yeah.
You should be able to back it up. And if you can't, then maybe that wasn't the right decision. Right? If you can't answer to the people who it affected, then maybe that shouldn't have been the decision you made. That's Haley's opinion. So in the story, she opened up the whole, head of HR actually opened up the whole thing telling us a joke about a cat trap that she had set up in her neighborhood, and how she thought it was hilarious that her neighbor's cat had both of its legs broken in her cat trap. I remember the cackle to this day. It was something that really was chilling. This is how the head of HR, okay? This was her like intro, oh, this is what's going on in my life. And so I kind of felt like at that point it wasn't going to go the way we wanted it to go. Anyway, a gentleman got up and did basically a long statement about how atrocious this was and how inappropriate, blah, blah, and like this is just so typical of the new people who have taken over management. You don't care about us out here. And her response to that was maybe understandable because, you know, when someone comes at you in a public forum, you automatically go into a crisis response, and your brain, the chemistry changes.
Is that because the people around you are also gonna listen to your answer, or because
you're on the spot? You're on the spot, and you know that you can't get out of it. So you're in essence trapped to talk about something you really thought you could get yourself out of it. That's what she thought. She could just get up there and flap about for 45 minutes and not actually answer any of the questions.
Okay.
And her response in the fight or flight, because here's what happens. This is a little pin in the story here. What happens in crisis communications when someone is stressed or upset, their ability to share and take in information changes. Literally, your brain changes. Right now, talking to you,
the receiver or
the receiver, the person who's if say I'm having to tell you that your dog died, right?
Yeah.
Your brain is not going to respond and take information in the same way that it is doing it right now. Because right now, I'm talking to Mario, the frontal cortex. I'm talking to your frontal cortex, which is right here. This is the seat of human reason and our, adulting,
Yeah.
society, civilization. when you get scared or upset or really mad, you can't help it. It's not a choice. It's not like a conscious choice. It completely bypasses the information coming in through your ears and your eyes, completely go out past your frontal cortex, and they hit your amygdala. Your amygdala is the center of fight or flight. It does not sit and think. It's responding. This was important. I want to say this was an important part of our evolution, because in the jungle, when we were sitting around and we looked over and we saw, well, there's a lion. You don't sit there and think to yourself with your frontal cortex, there's a lion. Look at how pretty it is. By the time that you've sat there with your frontal cortex, it's eating you. Well, our brain's designed, amygdala, let's do that. I see the lion, I'm out of here. Well, she responded, that HR lady, bless her heart, responded as if a lion had just appeared in the jungle. and she was so angry at him for asking a very legitimate question. And it's because he said, well, I know you live in this neighborhood in Charlotte, and I know that you make this amount of money, because it was a public company at the time, and you can see what people make, the executives make.
Yeah.
So I think it's a real, like, he said something to the fact, like, it's some cheek for you to get up here and tell us, when we're having to decide which kid we can send to college at this point. You're trying to tell us, you have your own chauffeur, that $200 more a month is a reasonable thing. And that was her thing. She argued with him. She argued with him about whether or not he had a right to be upset. You want to know how well that goes? Doesn't it? You don't get to argue with someone whether they have the right to be upset or not. So, she got up there. She's like, well, I actually find this to be very reasonable healthcare. Yeah, girl, that's because you make $3 million a year. What would unreasonable healthcare look like to you? So, I'm kind of digressing more into the communication stuff, but to me, like, AI is just one other tool that we use. It's another channel we can use to test our communications, brainstorm, proofread, and in some cases, write our communications. I think if you're a company and you have crisis plans, like if you're a utility, if you own a nuclear power plant and you are not looking at using AI within your crisis communications, you're going to be doing your employees and your community and your customers and your shareholders a big disservice. Why wouldn't you have ChatGPT be able to put in a bunch of technical information and spit out a non-emotional but empathetic press release, which would take 2 minutes on ChatGPT and be perfectly acceptable? You're not trying to win any Pulitzer prizes or anything. You just need to get the information out timely, effectively, and empathetically. Why would you use a human when it can take an hour? So to me, it's like there are certain use cases that are just kind of like, no duh. Why wouldn't you do that?
I mean, but there are certain cases where you just can't avoid but talking to...
Correct.
Communicating first person, right?
That's right. There's just no substitute for interpersonal communication. And what happens with AI and when you go online is that you lose so much nonverbal. Right now, 80% of our communication that we're giving each other are nonverbal. It's the micro expressions. Like, is someone sitting forward in their chair? Are they going like this? Are the corners of their mouth turned down? Where is their head turned? Is their head turned? There's just all these things. You can actually read about it on my blog, Talking Points for Life, about all these nonverbal cues that we give each other. And you miss on that. And so I think that communication becomes less nuanced and a little bit harder to get across in these really virtual forums.
And even through FaceTime, you're never making eye contact, is what I found out.
You're looking at
You're just looking at a face, but never making eye contact, which was very weird to me. I was like, you know what? You're right. I FaceTime people and just get an awareness of where they are, but never connect fully with the person. And I think that's what you're trying to do with with Impact. And thank you for really coming here and sharing your perspective. Your background really has a lot to do with why you're doing the work. Where do you see Impact going?
I would love within the next 5 years to actually host an in-person event. A large event. We've had workshops and things like that, but there's a company called the AI Marketing Institute, which I admire greatly. They got into the AI marketing communication stuff years ago, and forgetting the name of the gentleman Paul, I think his name is Paul, who is the leader of that, has a great podcast. I look at what they do and I think I really would love to do that, but for small business, because what they do, AI Marketing Institute, is very corporate, large company focused.
Okay.
And in fact, like, they have Maycon every year. I went last year, met so many fabulous people. It was wonderful. But this year, the price of the tickets are like insane, and it's because they're getting it. Their audience is going to be more of the corporate, and I see there's like this little audience, this audience of small and medium business owners who are being kind of left out because it's not, it's maybe not as lucrative, right?
Yeah.
So, and Paul has a lot of great contacts within the big tech world and within the corporate world, so it just makes sense that was the direction their agency took. So for me, seeing them as a wonderful example and inspiration, I'd love to do the same for small, medium businesses with impact. So I would say within the next 5 years to do a large in-person event, probably here in Charlotte or Idaho, which is another one of my hot spots. I like to go out there. But and then just keep having these conversations and doing the great debate and helping people as much as I can to at least, let's talk about it. Let's have the conversation. If I can get you feeling, if not so much feeling better about AI so much as the technology, but at least help you feel better about your place in the world and where this technology is, that it's not this big scary black box. You can wrap your brain around it. You can. I got you, boo. It'll be okay.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the hope and the dream, the vision.
No, thank you, Haley, for coming on the podcast,
Thanks
sharing an hour with you.
Yeah.
Where can we find you?
So if you would go to my website at www.impactinnovate, that's AIMPACT, innovate.com. And then I also have another site that's just my blog. It's all about helping people navigate some of the tricky social situations, like how to resign or how to tell your best friend she's not going to be your bridesmaid. Really, really sticky social situations. They're talking points. So it's all about what I've learned and distilling that and putting it into helping people have better, more healthier communication with the people they love and they work with. So talkingpointsforlife.com.
Thank you, Haley, and I hope to have you again. Guys, if you stayed this long, make sure you guys subscribe. And if you guys need anything in regard to AI, I think that we had a fun, open discussion about AI. Please visit Haley's website, and we'll catch you guys in the next one.
Thank you.
Thank you, Haley.